Good morning, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. It's Thursday, which means we had Andor last night, and I think more than any other Star Wars show, maybe except for The Mandalorian, definitely more than Book of Boba Fett, I would say surprisingly more than Obi-Wan even, because I recognize Obi-Wan's not a great show, and it does have its issues, but I did really like it too, and I think it was just like, I'm 28 years old. I was a kid when the prequels came out. Like, I was the target audience for those movies, and they did something for me, and I loved them. They're ridiculous, they're over the top, the acting, it's like, there's a lot of really dumb things that happen in them, but I still have a soft spot for them. But I don't think that, I didn't leave work going, oh, awesome, I gotta watch Obi-Wan tonight. In the same way that Andor, I'm getting that, like, oh yeah, new episode of Andor tonight. Like, and then there's that, now I gotta wait a week for the next part of this. And last week I said that last week's episode where Kino Loy went through that entire arc of coming around to being to helping out and deciding to escape with them. I forgot my headphones. Fuck. Like that whole arc that he goes through, where it's like ending with how many guards are there on each floor, and he says never more than 12. Like, him doing that is such a great turn for the character. And then for this episode to build on that in such a great way, where it's like, there's at least two opportunities where characters are giving these over-the-top speeches about, the power they hold over the Empire, even if it is scattered into spirit and all of that. Like, they recognize they have this level of power. I don't think that, I think everything kind of works. The jailbreak is great. Now, I think we have 2 episodes left, and I think that that's really where this show is really starting to get interesting for me. Well, not starting to get interesting, it's been interesting the whole time. Like, way more than I thought it was going to. Like, this is a show that when they announced it, I was like, alright, but it's Cassian Andor, who gives a crap. Like, I know he was a spy for the Rebels, and now this. But I did not anticipate the show would be anywhere near as good as it is. And it's like small things where it's like, there were entire episodes where we don't see a stormtrooper. And it's like, oh, holy shit, they showed stormtroopers, and it's like, because of the way the show is done, we know how fucking goofy the stormtroopers are and all of that, but they're intimidating. Because it completely reframes your thought process around these characters, or these entities. Like, it's just so well done every step of the way, where it's like, even something like that works. In the same way that, like, someone pointed out that in the first few episodes, like, there's that TIE fighter that's just, like, terrifying that comes out, and it's like, oh, it's just a TIE fighter. Like, we've seen these countless times before. We know what a TIE fighter is, and what it can do, and what it, and they're not exactly the most fearsome vehicle in the galaxy, but with the context of the show being what it is, it's so much worse, and like this, they do so much in this show too. Seeing the lower levels of Coruscant's always fun. I remember watching the Clone Wars 2D animated series back in the 2000s. I got them on DVD for Christmas, and then I got really sick, and I was like, alright, well, let me watch this. So I was laid up at home, and I watched that show all the way through, and I remember Anakin going back to Padme, and seeing this, what's it called? Seeing this, like, going down there and seeing what Coruscant looks like on the ground levels, not just, the affluent city part up high. Like, it was a great thing. I was like, oh, holy shit, they should do this more often. And then they were going to do that game, or the show, I think it was a game 1313, but they ended up not doing it. But they go down to, like, the 200th floor, and it's like, holy shit, like... Because it's like, you think about the context for 200 floors, it's like, our tallest buildings are, like, 150. Like, and that's their lower levels, where it's like, oh, this is utility crap down here. I just really love a lot of what they did, with this show. What else was there? There is the Mon Mothma bit where the other guy is trying to get her to give her daughter as a bargaining chip to his son. It's just so majorly fucked up. Like, and it's one of those things where it's like she's slowly becoming desensitized to what's going on, even within allies, and she's just like, fuck this. Like that level of, like, well, I mean, he's 14, she's 13, like, we can just do that, we can just set up an introduction. Like, it's just such a creepy moment that it's like, you just, ooh. And the jailbreak is great, and I want to go back to the jailbreak, because the jailbreak is probably my favorite part of the episode, where they do finally escape, and they get out of the, what's it called, they get out of the cells, and they start breaking everyone else out. And they start getting everyone out of the jail, and, they finally get to the control room, and, like, look, everyone's out, and it's one of those things that, like, I don't know why I didn't get it until right now, but, I mean, maybe it's just that I missed it in the first episode, and then when I watched it back, I was like, oh, right, okay. Like, it's such a genius thing to have it where, the people who are in the jail, like the prisoners, don't wear shoes, and their entire thing to lock down the facility quickly is to just electrify the floors. It's such a brilliant little thing that's like, you have no risk of friendly fire, and it's just like, it's such a collective punishment level of cruelty that's just tremendous. And it just shows, like, the callousness and the casual tyranny of the Empire in that regard. And then on top of that, too, you have that happen. And it's like, when they get to the main control room, it's like, look, we're just going to do that to the entire facility. Everyone who's not in their cells will be electrified. So please return to your cells in 40 seconds. And the thing is, too, it's like, people are far enough away where they can't get back. So it's like, they know people are going to die doing this, because they can see how many people have escaped and how many have gotten far enough away where they can't get back in 40 seconds. Like, they're just like, look, you are all going to die, motherfuckers, because you will not survive this. And it's such a brilliant piece of, of a threat. And then for Andor and Kino to come in and be like, and take control, and then for Kino Loy to give that speech the way it is, like, there's one way out, we're getting out of here, they're never going to let us leave, they're just going to, when your shifts are over, they're not letting you out, they're just going to transfer you somewhere else, and you're going to continue to work there, they're making the sentences up on the spot, it's all bullshit, let's just go, like, and it's like, we have control of the facility, we have the numbers, they know they're outnumbered, and there's this great shot where they're running by, and all the guards are huddled up in one room with rifles, and it's like that, and they're just terrified, because it's like, holy shit, we have lost the facility. It's such a great little moment that it just works so well, and then for them all to get to the end, and then it's like they get to the end, and the way out is to jump down into the water and swim to safety, and then for Kino Loy to get there, and for him to have the Moses moment of like, he's the one who's going to bring them to the promised land, but he himself can't enter. Like, for him to get there and for him to look down and see the water and be like, I can't swim. And Andor can't help him, and he's still there in the facility. Like, it's just such it's just such a sad moment. And it's like, because it's like that realization that he's like, because he knows he did the right thing. And you can see on his face, like, Andy Serkis does such a great performance in this small arc that he's a part of. I think he's only in 3 episodes, but he's got such a great arc in this whole thing where he's like, I did the right thing, and I will not be able to see the fruits of that, but I did the right thing. And it's such a great moment when he's there at the end, and then Andor is like, all right, well, like, you can tell Andor is trying to figure out how to get him to safety too, but he gets pushed down because everyone's trying to jump out and go, and it's like, it's just such a, it's just such a sad moment. It's just such a great button to the entire thing. And then to reveal who the rebel spy is within the Empire, and I think that's another big thing that they're doing too with this, is that the Empire is this giant bureaucracy, and I think that what this show is really doing is really getting into that more and more about what the Empire really is. And it's like, yes, it's tyrannical, and yes, it's a dictatorship, but at the end of the day, it's a dictatorship run by a bureaucracy, and a poorly run bureaucracy at that. And the problem with that is, you end up with these guys who are in these positions, and they're like, look, even if I don't 100% agree with with what they're doing entirely, like, I'm going to work with the rebels because it's in me and my family's best interest. And then using that same thing to be like, I can't do this because I will be killed if they find out. Like, that guy has a very legitimate concern about his own livelihood and his life and his family's lives. He's got a very valid concern there. And just, for him to have that speech down at the end and be like, okay, well, we are going to, talk about, it's in the best interest of the galaxy. And then that moment that's, where he talks about, 50 men are going to get killed, you have to do something to stop it, because there's that whole thing where they found the rebel cell and they found the rebel pilot and they killed the rebel pilot, and it's like, well, what we'll do is we'll make it look like he died in space and then just send it in and use that as a trap to lure them out. And he's going to warn the Empire about that, or he's going to warn the rebels about that plan. And for Luthen to just go like, we can afford to lose those 50 men, it's such a great thing, because it's like, there's this understanding among the major rebel operatives that, the cause is bigger than people. The cause is bigger than all of that. And what we're looking at, too, is I really like this idea that we have these characters who are kind of just as ruthless as the big ones from the Empire, from your Vaders, your Thrawns, your other characters on the rebel side, and are willing to sacrifice their own men multiple times over for the benefit of the cause. And it does what, The Last Jedi did, just without explicitly saying it, with this gray morality that's now infiltrating Star Wars. It's doing a lot. And I don't think we've mentioned the Force once in this entire show. We haven't seen a lightsaber. There wasn't a lightsaber in his little facility. Where it's like, okay, well, there's no lightsaber, anywhere in there. And it's just this beautiful kind of moment where it's just all out on Front Street, kind of, where we're just looking at we're looking at the grand scope of both of these entities that are, as of right now, kind of in the beginnings of a war. If this is the American Revolution, we have not yet had the Lexington and Concord moment. We've had small skirmishes, we've had, the Boston Massacre, we've had, things like that. I think that, if we look at it in that context, I would say the raid that happened earlier this season, where they stole all of the payroll, that would be the, that would be kind of like the Boston Tea Party. Like, where they're just going and fucking shit up and going out. And it's like, looking at what this whole kind of universe is doing, it's like, we haven't had that moment yet. Where, what's the inciting incident between the rebels and the Empire that brings us from a Cold War, from passive aggression, I want to say, but like, you know, not yet a full-on armed, bloody conflict. Like, what is the, you know, what's the thing that's going to push it over the edge and push it from, you know, what we are now into, because even by the time we get to Rogue One, the rebels are still operating as rebels. Like, they're not operating as, you know, it's not like they're fully operating the way we see them in A New Hope. Granted, it is also A New Hope is like 10 minutes later. Like, either way, it's like, you know, they're operating at full capacity in a full armed conflict. Like, we are in the Galactic Civil War at that point. Like, I don't think that we've had the moment yet where it's like, this is going to be the full formal shots fired between a formal rebel alliance and and the Empire. And I don't think we've had that moment yet. And I think it's that there has to be that moment, and there has to be the moment where the rebels have to win that fight. But we are not quite there yet. Because right now it's still espionage stuff. And I think even in Rebels at this point, it's still espionage stuff. But look, at the end of the day, like, I don't think that I think that might be where this show ends. Like, I could see this show ending with that battle. At the end of season 2. Because I think it's only getting 2 seasons now. That's where I think this show is going to end up going. To show us the spark that ignites, you know, the rebellion. Like, you know, the spark that lights the fire, that warms the, you know, that activates the fireplace, that warms the, I don't fucking remember the analogy that Poe used in episode, was it episode 9? Or was it episode 8? It lights the spark that burns the First Order to the ground or some bullshit like that. Which is like, alright, well, we're already 3 movies into this conflict, and a conflict that's already begun, let alone anything like that. So, like, can we, like, not pretend like this is brand new information? Like, it's just so ridiculous. Like, oh, now we're gonna stop the First Order. It's like, oh, okay, so what was the plan in the previous movies? Like, are we just ignoring that? Whatever. So, yeah, I cannot recommend Andor enough. It is so worth the time to watch. It's just, it is, like, it is prestige TV in a way that we normally reserve for non-franchise content. But it's like, it is a show that now every week, it's like Wednesday comes, I'm like, what's going on? And I want to see it, not because I'm like, ooh, who's showing up this week, in the way that I was with like Book of Boba Fett, and even with like Mandalorian. That was my thing. It's like, oh, cool, the Marshals this week. Oh, cool, like, you know, we're getting Bo-Katan, and it's like, oh, cool, we're getting this, and it's like, all right, yeah, that's all well and good, that's all awesome, but like, you know, if that's the only reason I'm tuning in, then that's the only reason I'm tuning in. That's not saying good things for the story. I mean, here we have I'm not watching the show for the fan service. I'm not watching the show for, you know, what cool thing from the animated shit, or what cool thing from the books, or what cool thing from... And look, we do get a little bit of that. I'm not saying they didn't give that at all. Like Admiral Yularen showed up, and he had a role in this, and all of that, and it's like, going into ISB and all of that, it's all really cool stuff that was never really explored in the movies, but here we're getting a chance to really explore it in live action after we saw it in Rebels and we heard about it in books and stuff. But it's just so well fleshed out that, like, ISB feels like a legitimate threat, and it feels like a KGB almost, and it's so well done within the confines of this show. Check it out if you haven't already. I cannot recommend this show highly enough. I'm having a very hard time not saying it's better than Sandman, and that says a lot, because I think that when this year started and Sandman was coming out, I was like, okay, so I know what my show of the year is, unless it shits the bed hard, which I don't think it will because Neil Gaiman's involved. I think that the series of the year is going to be The Sandman. Nowhere on that list did I think Andor was going to be anywhere near that. And yet here we are. Like, it's just fantastic. So I'll be seeing Black Panther tomorrow. I couldn't get in tonight. So Black Panther tomorrow. And Zootopia Plus tomorrow morning, probably. Oh no, Titans tomorrow morning. And then Zootopia Plus at some point this weekend, when I make time for it. But until then, have a great rest of your week.